Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the conversation. It is Monday, June 7th, 2021. We are deep into the future, as I like to say. Oh, shoot, my partner's calling. I'll pause recording and go on mute. I'll be right back. And here, deep into the future, June 2021, there is so much on the table right now, so much at stake as has never been before, because the planet is exponentially overheating. And we're in the midst of the sixth mass extinction. And there is just nothing normal or sustainable about either of those two things. Also, politically and culturally, the vast majority of humanity is in a bit of a death spiral, with totalitarianism, fascism on the rise, stupidity on the rise, the mass media outlets like Fox News in the United States brainwashing people. So we're in a bit of a real mess. And so in the midst of all this, we have a golden opportunity for those of us who are sufficiently awake to both help awaken the others, help support the others and ourselves and each other, and to progressively bump this whole thing up several notches. And so there's a picture I like to draw, or a couple of pictures I like to draw that kind of put some framing to this whole conversation about where we're at in history at this critical moment, and the opportunity for us to get out of the death spiral of exponential planetary overheating, mass dying, mass destruction, descent into totalitarianism, fascism, etc. Right? So let me go ahead and screen share. And I encourage everyone to just jump in. Don't even worry about raising your hand and waiting to be called on. Just jump in. Let's just make this a flowing conversation. So everyone's familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Where we start off with like food, down here at the bottom, food, shelter, water, healthcare, and all that. And then, we move up to, belonging and, good stuff like that, all the way up to at the top of Maslow's is self-actualization, right? But the way I see it, the pyramid actually keeps going up. This dashed line represents this imaginary glass ceiling of Maslow's, where above that we have what I call collective actualization, something we're doing right now, right? And all the way up towards another sort of pinnacle of sorts, which is, the fullest expression of collective actualization is something I refer to as collective superintelligence. But a very, very benevolent form of collective superintelligence. It was one of the great Greek philosophers, I don't know whether Plato or Socrates, I think it was one of those two, who said that, or maybe it was Aristotle, who said that the highest form of friendship is people coming together and working together towards the common good, right? It's all well to kick back and watch, a football game, a soccer game, as we say on this side of the pond, and drink some beers and all that and have fun together, just being friendly and, having fun together. But what we're doing right here, right now, working together towards the common good, for me, is the highest form of friendship, right? It doesn't get any better than this, frankly, regardless of what stage we're at. Yeah, we're in the death spiral, but we're working to get out of it, right? Imagine a future where we've gotten out of the death spiral and now we're just building these utopian cities and utopian agronomies. That'll be a lot more fun. But friendship is friendship, whether you're in good times or bad times. Right now we're in bad times, we're in hard times, but we can still have this beautiful friendship, this beautiful working together, right? So the pinnacle of this pyramid, I go back and forth between screen sharing. The pinnacle of this pyramid, I'll call it I'm going to call it not a hierarchy of an individual's needs, as Maslow put it. I don't know exactly how he put it, but let's call it a hierarchy of human evolution, right? What's interesting about Maslow is his focus was on the individual, right? Do I have enough to eat? Do I feel like I belong? Am I self-actualized? And there was a hidden subtext in there that basically goes like this: to hell with everyone else and everything else, all other creatures, all other people, just to hell with them. I'm focused on me, 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 me. I think Maslow would have done great in the 1980s in the United States. But beyond the individual being well, and I'm not discounting any of that, I'm just saying it's not a complete picture. Beyond the individual being well is the collective, right? The collective being well. Ultimately, all of humanity, that's what will really hit this pinnacle, when all of humanity is united in forming and maintaining a collective superintelligence, which we may as well talk more about right now. So what is a collective superintelligence? Well, this meeting is an example of a node within an emergent network of conversations, right? So just imagine that there are tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of conversations like this, in heavy quotes. I say like this because every conversation is different. Here in this particular conversation, our scope, our context is the big picture of the entire planet and saving, healing, and transforming life on Earth. Other conversations will be much more focused on very specific things. Some of them will just be conversations within the context of a single neighborhood, in a single town, right? In England or Scotland or Ireland or the United States, and it's focusing on community gardens within that town. Awesome, right? So different conversations will have different scopes or areas of focus. That conversation that I just mentioned might be connected to a broader conversation about community gardening and permaculture and wastewater recycling and rainwater catchments generally. And they might be focused on how to apply those techniques and systems locally. But so these are examples of connections between conversations. But the big picture of the big vision of collective superintelligence is this vast network of conversations that is hyper connected, and that we have, each conversation has visibility, transparent visibility to the whole of the network, right? We can all see all the conversations that are happening, maybe not see them all at once, because if there's 100,000, that's a lot to see. Oh, 1 second, my mother-in-law is calling. I'm going to pause recording and I'll be right back. Okay, after a brief pause, we're on to wicked problems. David, go for it.
Okay, so wicked problems. I've been looking at wicked problems all my life, before I even knew there were wicked problems. And so, I'm 51 now. So that's a few years, not as old as some people here, maybe, but we're all, I think, a little bit older. And the solutions that I have seen everybody attempt to do so far are methods that we use for problems that are complicated or more subtly complex. And so how do we go forwards, even how we're discussing. So just what you just said just now, the mass production of awareness, that is your purpose. I call it mass production of awareness. I came up with that 20 years ago. And I have to say, I failed completely and miserably to attempt to further that. However, we've got mindfulness and so on kind of happening in its own way. Collective actualization, I definitely agree. The relationship between the individual and the collective, that is the complex. That is definitely the complex, the core of the complex problem. How do, for example, I right now engage with you guys, 5 of us. So the collective actualization at the moment now, as we go forwards, and how you actually manifest that during this meeting. That's what I'd be interested in. That's because if you get that right, I think things change. I think that improves the numbers of people that will engage. If we can work out how to manifest the collective power that we have just between us 5 in a meeting, that's the holy grail. We are a node in a global context, quite correct. So everything that you've said, I have not disagreed with. Some claims you go, well, we don't quite know about the extinction thing, but it's reasonable to think that it could be. It's wise to consider the level of disorder and almost plan for the worst. Let's just say. So everything you've said, I agree with. Carry on, I guess, but it's to do with how are we going to move on these complex, and I think we need to do that as we're listening. James has talked about it as a fluid thing. I agree, it is, but we need to somehow or other realize this moment that we have, this moving moment, the power of now. We need to realize that collectively. Well, I think in our conversations.
I totally agree. I maintain we have vastly more power than most folks are willing to admit or recognize or become aware of, right? Because with great power comes great responsibility. And it's a lot easier for most people, I think, to just drift through life saying, well, I'm powerless. There's nothing I can do. Think Luke Skywalker early in the very first Star Wars Episode 4 in 1977. Said, well, then what could I do? I'm just a little farm boy, right? I can take you as far as Mos Eisley or wherever you're going, but good luck to you, Obi-Wan Kenobi. What can I do, right? So each of us individually has tremendous potential. And that potential, I believe, is maximally realized as we come together, right? I mean, look at the 5 of us here right now, and look at what we're co-creating. We're excited, we're optimistic, we're envisioning, we're co-envisioning together, right? With the 5 of us here, now it's perfect. If any one of us were not here, it'd be less perfect. Take away any 2 of us, it's less perfect still. There are times when I show up here and I'm all alone. How perfect is that? Where's the collective there? Right? So anyway, I'm just saying, right now, each of us is 20% of this part of perfection. And since we're looking at the big picture in a way that probably no one else is, whether right or wrong, it's a contribution to the conversation about how we need to move forward as humanity at this critical juncture in history. This is valuable, what we're doing here right now. And your being here is a valuable contribution. You're exercising your power. Each and every one of you, each and every one of us is exercising our power. That needs to be acknowledged. This is not just some random conversation on the deck of the Titanic where the fate of the Titanic is sealed. right? We're actually looking at an iceberg ahead of us, and we've got an opportunity to pull a red cord and do something very real, very significant. It's up to us. And it's up to us, each and every one of us in this moment, right now, the power of now, to truly engage or sit back and just say, oh, well, that's interesting. I'm going to watch this like I'd watch a television show. Maybe I'll chuckle every now and then. Anyway, so back to what I was sharing. Continue to jump in, everyone. Ask for a pause whenever you feel like it. So on the left, we have this hierarchy of human evolution. And that hierarchy is independent of where we are in history. Totally independent. This is the pyramid on the left is equally applicable 50,000 years ago, as 5,000 years ago, as 500 years ago, as 50 years ago, as 5 years ago, as 5 months ago, as today, as 5 months from now, as 5 years from now. That's just an absolute timeless snapshot, theoretical, and probably wrong, just like Maslow was wrong. It wasn't that he was wrong, it was incomplete. He described the bottom half of the pyramid, right? What about the top half? Okay. Now, it starts to really get interesting when we look at our current reality. Now let's apply the left pyramid to our current reality. What's happening right now? Well, a lot is happening right now, and there's no simple picture of it. Any picture that can be drawn is an oversimplification, but still, we're a species that runs on stories. So let's tell a simple story with pictures and words. I'm going to tell the story of exponential planetary overheating being the main driver of destruction of the biosphere. It's the single biggest driver. Well, actually, there's another big driver, which is humans doing animal agriculture. Okay, that's another major driver. So we have multiple drivers. Those are the two biggies of the destruction of the biosphere. It's too damn hot, too damn dry. When it gets too hot and too dry, fires happen. And, Australia burns, the west coast of North America burns, et cetera, et cetera. And this destruction of the biosphere, in turn, is the driver of the sixth mass extinction, period. Okay, and there are other arrows in here to be identified, to be mapped out. There's all kinds of feedback loops. In fact, the destruction of the biosphere is also a major driver of exponential planetary overheating, right? Our polar ice caps are part of the biosphere. They're melting. That melting removes mirror. Removing mirror makes more heat for planet, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, there's a whole big complex picture. And, it's a giant mess, but the single synopsis summary of this is all of this is leading to a pretty bleak outcome, which is mass extinction of all of us, including humanity, who should be the caretaker species. So the current reality is we're in a death spiral, right? And things are getting worse by the day, and it's accelerating. And, so hence, because of that, we have a really urgent need to get smart really fast, to push ourselves up this pyramid on the left, up towards collective superintelligence, this network of conversations. And it's not just a network of conversations, it's a network of conversations, collaborations, and co-creations. Now, we're recording this. This will be posted on YouTube. This is a co-creation. It's an intellectual co-creation. We're not designing a new mechanical system or electrical system, though we are actually, through this conversation, contributing to the design and implementation of a new information system. Because every information system, before it gets built, somebody first needs to whiteboard the basic scenarios, right? We did this at Microsoft routinely. We wouldn't just start coding something, right? We'd get on a whiteboard and we say, all right, what are the scenarios we're trying to facilitate here with this technical solution, right? Well, the scenarios we're trying to, so we're doing real work here, and there is real work product, this recording, and also our own memories and the impacts that it has on each of us that will carry forward into the next conversations and other conversations throughout the network. Remember? Different conversations in the network impacting each other, hyper-connected, et cetera. But in general, collective superintelligence is a network of conversations, collaborations, co-creations. And what needs to be co-created here, there's a bunch of stuff that needs to be co-created. One of the things that urgently needs to be co-created is a solution to that mega driver of exponential planetary overheating, which is this, one of the two biggest drivers of destruction of the biosphere, that and animal agriculture. But let's focus for a moment on exponential planetary overheating. That has a solution, a very short-term, near-term solution. We can actually halt this exponential planetary overheating and reverse it through the application of solar radiation management, reflecting a significant portion of sunlight back into space so that it doesn't have the opportunity to heat up the planet in the first place, right? Listen, turn off the sun, or imagine a giant mirror, up in space, somewhere in between Earth and the sun, a giant, giant mirror that denied the Earth of all of its sunlight. The planet would freeze really, really quickly. Like, I don't know, probably in 48 hours or so, we'd have frigid cold air, right? And then ice would form on lakes and eventually in the oceans, and we would freeze very, very quickly. So the singular way that we have at our disposal right now, I'm not talking about wishful thinking. I'm talking about an actual levers that we can pull, actual things that we can do. The biggest and most impactful thing we can do right now to cool the planet, to both stop exponential overheating and reverse it. Those are two steps, but we first have to stop the current overheating before we can reverse it. But both of those things can be accomplished with solar radiation management, with deploying vast arrays of mirrors floating in the ocean, in the Arctic region, vast canopies of mirrors in desert regions, wherever we can increase reflectivity, wherever we can reflect photons from inbound from the sun back into space, that's solar radiation management. And that is the singular way to cool the planet now. Speaking of now, right? That's it. We don't have the technology to suck down, sequester CO2 and methane. And of the things that we can do to reduce emissions, right? Unfortunately, the reduction of emissions is a very weak lever for cooling the planet, simply because the greenhouse gases that are already there stick around for a long time. And it's the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, not the rate at which we're contributing to them, but the amount that are there that determines how much overheating is happening at any given moment. That and changes in the albedo, the reflectivity of the planet. Well, the overheating that's happened so far has already melted so much ice that that's now a major driver of planetary overheating, this loss of ice, this loss of reflectivity, this loss of the polar mirrors and the mirrors throughout the glacier regions, snow-capped mountains, et cetera, throughout the world. So we have one lever let's not debate that right now. It certainly can be debated, and debate is essential as long as it's supported by facts. But let's not debate that right now. Let's talk about solutions. So there is the solution of planetary scale solar radiation management, which unfortunately at the moment is largely theoretical, because we haven't grown up, matured enough as a species to say, okay, let's take it from the theoretical to the actual. Let's actually do it. We don't yet know how to get together as a species around the world at an international level and actually get together and do this. We barely even know how to talk about carbon emissions, right? Which would have been the way of controlling this problem 50 years ago, even 30 years ago. But we're about 30 years too late to solve the problem through drawdown, right? That whole drawdown community, it's wishful thinking based on ignorance. The ignorance being thinking that just by reducing emissions, we can get this thing under control. We're way past that point. So again, let's talk solutions. So we have different levels of solutions. There's what I call the L1 solutions with respect to solar radiation management. L1 being, and in fact, you know, I should screen share something else here that I'll get to in a moment. Okay, L1 solutions. Let me get ready to screen share this. Here we go. So the L1 solutions I'm talking about are for cooling the planet. Mirrors, that's solar radiation management, veganism, and others. Level 1 solutions. What are the physical things that need to be done? At what scale and by when? Those three questions need precise answers. Again, if we are to avoid the projected milestones of planetary destruction discussed in the preceding section. In an earlier section, I wrote about, you know, this is what we can predict if we don't do anything. What's the magnitude, urgency, et cetera, of the problem? But here I am down in solutions, right? So if we want to avoid further mega accelerations to mass extinction, including our own extinction, we need to answer these questions. How much reflectivity do we need in terms of millions of square kilometers, and by when? How much veganism do we need in terms of billions of people eating plant-based, and by when? How much of the world's rainforests by region can we continue to decimate before it's too late to save those regions? Like, for example, the Amazon. Many would argue that it's too late in the case of the Amazon, right? How much of those same regions do we need to restore, regenerate, and by when? And this is key, as regards decarbonization, how much and by when must we decarbonize by sector? Now, the following is absolutely crucial. For example, as we eliminate the dirtiest emissions, we eliminate global dimming, which is an unintended form of SRM, solar radiation management. For instance, if we suddenly stopped 100% of the dirtiest emissions, like coal, overnight, within a matter of weeks, we would see a spike in global average temperature of between 1 and 2 degrees centigrade, according to Dr. Yetao at Harvard, who studies this stuff intensively. Bottom line, we need answers to all these questions. Right now, we're kind of flying blind collectively. That's part of the collective stupidity I was talking about. But back to the big picture. These are L1 solutions we're talking about. Reflectivity, veganism, stopping the decimation of rainforests and other ecosystems, et cetera. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Okay, let's just assume for the moment that we've got all those L1 physical solutions mapped out, right? We know what needs to be done physically. And now we're like, okay, knowing is great. It's a first step. You know, just like an alcoholic knows they need to stop drinking, but actually getting it done That's where we get to L2, level 2. That's where we say, okay, now that we need to know what needs to happen physically around the world to stop this exponential planetary overheating, what do we need to do within humanity to organize ourselves to actually get it done? Okay, that's L2. All right, let's take a look at L2. Welcome to L2. As we develop answers to the L1 solutions, as we develop answers to those questions about the L1 solutions, how much do we need, by when? In parallel, we need to come up with the answers to the L2 solutions, the softer solutions, one could say, to getting L1 done. So here we go. Here's a starter list. What are the transformations in politics that need to be done? What are the transformations in media, mass communication, in education, in culture, from a culture of all of us looking out for ourselves while the sky is falling to a culture of holding up the sky, religion, economy, right? If we're going to deploy millions of square kilometers of reflectivity in the oceans, we need the economy to start churning those out. That means we need some tweaks to the economy. Politics, right? Oh, I've said that twice. Spiritual transformation, right? See, for each of us to be here, to be in this conversation, required us to evolve spiritually to the point where we say, you know what, it's not just about me and my entertainment and my satisfaction and my accumulation of wealth and property and animals and whatever else. Intimately related to a spiritual transformation is a new story for humanity, right? And the final point here, and so on and so on. What are all of the changes, the solutions within each of these realms that needs to happen in order for the world to collectively embrace, fund, support, and ultimately implement all of the urgent L1 solutions in time? What do we need to do? This is some complex stuff. Next paragraph. This is some complex stuff, arguably vastly more complex than the L1 solutions themselves, right? I mean, let's face it, any high school physics student who's been paying attention can say, okay, got it. I understand how the planet's overheating, and I understand that to cool it down, we need mirrors. Brilliant. I'm joking. It's actually very simple. It's actually very simple if we're paying attention to the facts and the data and what's actually happening and how quickly we're overheating, melting, burning, etc. Okay. So again, back to the highlighted paragraph down here. This is some complex stuff. Getting humanity to actually get off our butts and organize ourselves and transform to the point that we're actually even thinking and feeling about taking responsibility for this situation, as opposed to looking at our investment portfolios or this shiny new car we want to get, or this girl we're trying to date, or whatever, right? How do we shift our focus from these immediate things that are right in front of us that we've been trained to focus on to this whole new level of thinking that, wow, we can actually cool the planet? That's a major shift for humanity. Again, this is some complex stuff. I'm reading from the screen here. Arguably vastly more complex than the L1 solutions, which are just science and engineering. And I'm an engineer. I come from a family of scientists and engineers. Science and engineering have become vastly easier with the advances in technology we've seen over the past decades. Vastly easier. We've got so much data, so many sensors, so many experiments, so much data streaming in, and so many supercomputers churning through. Oh, yes, David, go ahead. Yeah.
I'd just like to say, before you go into the next stage, because you're summarizing this, which is great, level 2 is the area that I've been working on, Jim. And I've been a maths teacher. I did social anthropology. I was meant to be a pure maths, study pure maths. Age of 19, the environment, the destruction of the rainforests, the Amazon rainforests. I was just like, we don't need another mathematician. There's a social problem. So I did social anthropology. Brilliant. But they're all, anyway, so since then I went into teaching because I wanted to experiment with people. And I found that I did. And I came up with some solutions for education. I think I've come up with the Gordian solution for education. But people weren't paying attention. And so I exited that and I came up with the first thing I came up with is an API, the equivalent of an API for organizations. The equivalent of API for organizations. You might appreciate what that means. Most people don't have a clue. Nobody I've ever spoken to ever understood what I mean by that. And we tried them quite successfully. However, there was no money flow. So I had to go deeper. I had to go, okay, so what's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem? And I'm not into problem solving. I'm not like a scientist. Okay, so I'm interested in tendency to Buddhism, psychosocial. So it's a wicked problem. So I'm not into the engineering. So the level 1, I go maybe, okay, maybe, but it's definitely level 2. All right. So I came up with an alternative for money. Okay, and we've built an app. And I built that app, and we're at beta version. Okay, and it does something quite remarkable. It treats money as a vector, not a scalar. It's 3,000 years of destruction. So I think it is the equivalent level of solution that I think you're looking for, but you haven't kind of described that really. And I think that there are alternatives also I've come up with 7 systems. So I summarize at the end of 2020, my 20 years of developing various solutions and 7 systems. And I've got, I think, Gordian solutions for 7 systems. Each one is, I think, a reasonable solution for each one, but it contravenes the self-supporting structures of all the systems. So if you try and change education, it is supported by how people think about money, how we think about ourselves, the economy, business, how we do business and everything else. So you change that thing and it just collapses and it keeps on collapsing. So you have to have the simultaneous solutions of multiple systems, right? So I'm with you, I'm with it. I'm like, great, but I'm coming up with specifics. Okay, so if you got specifics, great. If you don't, I've got the specifics. All right. The trick is though, even though I've got the specifics, it's going, well, which one of these specifics do we kind of lead with, as it were? And I think virality. Yeah. So it's to do with prioritizing and then say, well, let's try and lead with this one, lowest hanging fruit. So our tool should, if we produce a good enough content, or anybody produces good enough content, it does, what does it do? It generates revenue, distributes virally any digital content without marketing or advertising. Okay, distributes virally, generates revenue, okay, for any digital content virally. If people use our system, you share a thing and you share money, that's basically it. You share a thing and you share money. And if people forward that on, so you forward the money and the thing that you're sharing, you get exponential growth. Okay. And if people do make that decision within 5 minutes and share with 2 people, then after 10 steps, you've got 1,000, 20 steps, it's 1 million, 30 steps, it's 1 billion. Hello? I've got somebody just at my door. I'm going to have to speak to them. All right. I'm just trying to say that L2, I've been on it.
Awesome. Well, we need you here, David. So take care of what you need to take care of and keep coming back. You're welcome home. You've come to the right place.
I hope so. It'd be really nice if you kind of could check out what I'm saying, and then hopefully I fitted in some of the gaps.
I can't wait. I can't wait to hear. Can't wait to hear. Thank you, David.
So it sounds like my computer decided to crash at a moment where there's something fresh.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So let's
Whale.co.
Yeah, let's check it out. Squale.co. Let's definitely check it out. I
Whale.
thought I'd conclude what I was sharing, and then we can screen share Squale.co and check it out. Shall we do that? All right.
That works for me.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, just for the video's sake alone, I know to conclude it. Like.
Yeah, exactly. And then we can maybe start another video on Squale. So let's do that. All right. So we've got these L2 solutions, these human solutions. Now, hence the need for massive collective superintelligence to be brought to bear on each of the above dimensions and on all of them holistically, collectively, simultaneously, and in a logical sequence. Now, David, you mentioned that you have basically concrete proposals for how we can do this holistically, simultaneously, and in logical sequence, which sounds like a contradiction. It's really not. Obviously there's a certain sequence.
Yeah, the logical sequence, not quite logical. It's just to do with the lowest hanging fruit. What's going to basically open up for the other systems to simultaneous? You want to have them all happening. It's just how do you get that to happen? So money. Basically, we need to have the money flow right. And if you don't have the money flow, the thing's not going to happen. So
sure.
The money flow.
Very good. So now continuing on this thread of thought, and we'll come back here and say, hey, wait a second, we might have these solutions already. Let's check them out. But to complete the picture that I'm presenting here, there is an L3, collective intelligence. Here is a possible logical model, which if adopted could be part of the new story for humanity. L1 is what needs to be done physically. That's what we physically need to do. Mirrors, for example, eating plants instead of animals, etc. L2 is what can be done within the realm of human culture, society, psychology, spirituality, economy, politics, etc., in order to make L1 happen. L3 are the collective intelligence trim tabs necessary to orchestrate, number one, the vital work around L1, and number two, the necessary developments within the realm of L2. Now, that sounds like the virality that you're talking about, David. And what I'm suggesting, so here I just, the educators in all of us might find this appealing. So on the chalkboard, I would draw L3 enables and empowers L2, L2 enables and empowers L1. So the logical starting point is L3. So how do we get L3, collective intelligence, to evolve and do its thing, which brings us back to the first pyramid I drew of the hierarchy of human evolution. How do we get humanity to collectively evolve to the point that we are actively participating in a network of conversations and collaborations around all of the individual topics within the sphere of L1 and L2 and L3 for that matter, right? Repairing and improving the airplane in mid-flight, the airplane of L3, which is taking us to the land of evolution of L2 and L1. So how do we get L3 to evolve and do its thing? And then I say, enter the realm of L4, the ultimate trim tabs, which get L3 magnetized, organized, and evolving properly. Kiko Lab. Now you see, this email was originally sent to the leaders of Kiko Lab, which is a meeting that Marco and I participate in, and others, many others, every Monday, starting in 36 minutes, starting at 12 noon Pacific time. Because they're actually doing a lot of really great work in the realm of L3, of collective intelligence. So what I'm doing is, and here, let me just share a bit more about all that. So there's a lot of groups that work on collective intelligence and are really jazzed about collective intelligence because there's all these great platforms and systems like Zoom, like transcription and indexing and search and all this stuff that makes all this intelligence that's coming out of these conversations readily accessible and leverageable and exploitable and all that. But collective intelligence, in the absence of checking in with our current reality and the exponential planetary overheating and exponential destruction of the biosphere, is like a fire department that's really excited about its equipment and its training and its capabilities, but ignoring the category 10 fires that are raging all around it, right? You know, collective intelligence for collective intelligence sake, ignoring the planet on fire that we depend upon for life, something's missing from that picture. So that's why I'm lobbying them intensively to wake up to this and to the big picture and to consider themselves as L4, the ultimate trim tabs. When I say themselves, what I really mean is the collective intelligence community, right? Because those of us who really get all of this, as you were mentioning a few minutes ago, David, there's darn few people who get all of this. Well, there's darn few people who get all of this. I agree. But I'm saying those of us who do, we are in a position to do L4, which is to get the rest of the collective intelligence community properly magnetized and organized so that we can get on with the urgent work of L2, supporting L1, the mirrors, right? So that's that with that text that I wrote up just last week, in fact. And to bring this back to the drawing I was making, which I think it might be helpful to bring it back to that. Here we go. All right. So the big idea I now propose becomes this, that basically here, this is L4, the top of the pyramid, that seeing eye at the top of the pyramid that says, okay, wow, now I see everything that's going on all the way up and down this whole pyramid, all the way down to the people who are struggling to eat and all of the conflicts within humanity that are occurring at these lower levels. I see all that, and I see that we need this L3, right, of collective superintelligence to in turn make the transformations necessary at L2 so that we can finally get down to L1 over here, which basically means this: make extinction obsolete, say bye-bye to the skull and crossbones, which is our destiny if we don't do L4 to L3 to L2 to L1, right? So there's the big picture right there in a nutshell. With that, we've got half an hour until Marco and I and maybe others head over to the Kiko Lab meeting. And meanwhile, David has some hot stuff on the griddle to share with us. This is my bleeding edge. So at this point, I'm going to mute myself and just listen to whoever wants to talk. Sounds like you've got a lot to say, David, and even to share.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it today. Not going to say it today, good grief. But all I'm saying is that, I've been working on things that are below the radar. And I haven't seen anybody even describe the things that I've come up with in any of the spheres that I've worked in. That, if you click on that and then you register on there and then have a look at that content, that's literally what I'm working on right now, which is the culmination of about certainly 8 years to do with how do we see all the future projects that we're trying to do, that network that you're talking about, you know, all these conversations that people are having simultaneously. How do we actually, and so Marco showed me the software they're currently designing or developing for that. And I go, well, have a look at mine, because it's very different. There are fundamental differences, like calendars. I don't think we should be concretizing calendars. We shouldn't be filling it as if they're things, fundamental differences. I'm happy to go through some of my solutions if you want to at some point, or have a look at some of them. Have a look at the economic one, because that's I think fundamental. If we get alignment on that, I think we're off to the racehorses. I think we're off to the races. I think we'll be fine. I'm not so sure. Okay, I like kind of what you're saying, the L2, L3, but there's like that's happening in a classroom. Okay, there are solutions in a classroom that kind of equivalent to your L1, L2, kind of, and the L3. I go, it's almost like you're treating the L2, that group of the collective, what do you call it, the collective actualization, as a thing. Okay, and I think it's a state. Okay, it's a state. And so then to say that then does something, I go, I'm not sure. So L3, I go, that sounds like a projection. I think it's just a meta on L2. All right. So basically, when you're in a classroom with kids, all right, and you're not trying to teach them anything, okay, what you're trying to do is help them self-organize. Okay. And I've experienced this, and you get emergence, like murmuration. So when people talk about murmuration, and I go, yeah, I know about that. The trick is, how do we come up with a human? And that's what that link is. That link is just what I've been trying to do for years, is how do we simulate murmuration? How do we get the human version of murmuration? And so the kids self-organize. How do we self-organize? In such a way that is dynamic, it does the things I think you'd like to do. L2. However, L3, I kind of get what you're talking about, but that's concurrent in our existence. So right now, we need to manifest that thing, L3. It's too easy just to project all these things as big plans. And I go, no, it's got to be like now with us. So I think what you need are procedures during these conversations that are concrete examples of L1, L2, and L3, L4. If you can't do that, then you're talking about kind of things, okay? Whereas I think you need to have, so that's what I'm working on. I'm working on systems. And so I'm very close, very, very close. So I've got quite a few tools. But so for example, here's one thing I want to say. As in our listening, we manifest. In our listening, we manifest. Now that means it's not about the talker, because we get outnumbered. So Jamin was talking for like an hour, and there was 4 people listening, maybe doing different things. I was mostly listening, but at the end there, I was just like, I wanted to share this thing, and there were 4 people listening. And in fact, once this is shared, if anybody else does watch this, they are the ones who are live, not us. Well, us, we're just a recording to them. So to say that we're from the future is like, no, we're definitely in the past relative to those people, and we need to empower those people. So we've got to get this orientation and time correct. Okay, so I hear what you're saying, and there's many things that you're saying that I go, fantastic. I come from a background of basically psychosocial dynamics, and I'm happy to interface with the level. You're kind of almost doing backcasting. That's the impression I have. You're kind of doing backcasting, which is kind of like engineering, and that hence the L1, L2. And I go, oh, okay, I like that. But if we don't get us now, okay, going forwards, and thus another person watching this and going, holy fuck, I'm going to share this. Holy fuck, because they're actively involved in their listening. Okay, not, I want to follow what these people are talking about. They're going, it's resonant. This is, I'm going to share it. I'm going to put a bit of money in. I'm going to share it with a few people, and then we'll see what the next one is. okay, and they've got some solutions. Okay, so we should be asking for solutions. Anybody listening now, we should be going, right, at the end of this, right, if you know anything about this area, that area, please, get in contact. Share with somebody that you know that has got some kind of solution. But we have to be as concrete as we can be, or as precise as we can with these invitations, so that when somebody listens, they get the resonance, and then they go, I'm going to do this. They share it. Look, this is what I've got. And the groups will start to expand and grow at the rate of sharing, related to listening, values, and sharing, not talking, understanding, planning, and all that kind of stuff. So everything that I do is in the receptive state, not the talking state, okay, the receptive state. So if that makes any sense to you, brilliant. Good. Jim, I like the fact you do that, but I get the impression you're quite positive. I know you're very practical in engineering, but I also get the impression that you're quite positive. Well, yeah, you're quite positive. I think you're quite positive, but I think you're quite realistic. All right, but you know, because you agree that we're facing a disaster. It's just right. Sorry, right. You're allowed to be positive. I appreciate the fact that you made sense of what I'm saying. I think, but I suspect though. Okay, I suspect, you know, we're going to kind of like butt heads a little bit every so often, because the things that I normally say to people, usually people are just like, sorry, what? And you know, but I have engineered stuff to build tools so that people can use tools. It's not about theories and arguments and conversations. Okay, so that's why I'd like to interact, to have a conversation of action, to experiment, to try out things, and from these, you know, so it's kind of engineering, but psychosocial. Okay, so right, that's my piece. Anybody else? Has anybody looked at this thing? I can check my app to find out if you've actually logged in, because, you know, if you have, I'll be amazed, because very few people do. Nope, nobody's there. Nobody from this group is there.
Well, give us time, David. Give us time.
No, you see. No, it's simultaneous. It's simultaneous, my friends. It's simultaneous. So, listen, for example, your conversation right now, okay? If I was using my app and we were using my app, all right? Or people watching. Imagine somebody watching this, okay, and they're sharing it through Scale. It means the first few minutes when you start saying, well, the world's a disaster, and I was like, okay, I'll go with you for a while. And you hit all the major points, all right? And you're very skillful, I think, in describing the complexity and And I was like, okay, right, this is good. If people listen for long enough to do that, and they get to that point I would have gone, I'm going to share it with a friend of mine. I make the decision, I active in my listening. So by the time I get to the end of the thing, I've already done the action of adding money and sharing. In your conversation, in your talking for an hour, I've already done that. Now that's the tool, but that's what that does. That's what this tool does, okay? It's not, and so therefore the idea that something's going to happen afterwards, I go, no, we need to activate the time that we have in this hour. If we don't have that, I think you're talking. And however much talking you do, you might, if you've got a bit of money, if you've got a bit of something, you might get something done like everybody else. But if we don't activate our actions, our listening, we don't activate the listener who is listening now, I think it's all just a waste of time. So share, all right? So when you share this video, hopefully you're going to put the Scale link on it, create a little link to this recording, okay? And then people will go, oh, what the fuck? And then hear me and they just go, holy fuck, all right? But they will have got it from Scale. A friend will have shared it. I don't think this video, I think it might be the next one. So if anybody is listening right now and thinks they could do a better rendition of inclusion and invitation as Jamin has, but even better, please join. I mean, because I'm not that person. Okay, you can tell. I'm the inventor. I've got inventor blindness. I'm the worst person to do this, all right? But Jamin, I think you are actually pretty good at describing this kind of thing. I don't know if the others are. James, Alan, Marco.
I would agree what you're saying. I would agree in the sense that I'm here for, well, since the block party started, last February last year, but I've been sticking I'm with this because I believe in Jamin's vision and how he's been developing this all along, and it's as far as I'm concerned, my background is I was dropped out of education as a teenager because of recession here in Ireland in the 80s and things like that. I'm only 53 years of age myself. I'm a single parent, but my daughter's 31 now. The education due to an injury work with manual labour and designing gardens and things like that, landscape gardening. So I ended up going back to education, just when I was in my late 40s. And I had to get myself up to a level 6 standard then in order to go on to level 3, onto a degree standard. And I did my degree just back and finished it in 2019 in fine art. Because I am an artist at heart anyway. And I went for the degree, not for the purpose of trying to make a career out of it in any way either, because I'm realistically, prior to even going to college, I'm aware of the, our global situation politically, everything like climate, everything that comes into it. I could see that the world didn't go on anywhere fast, in anywhere good fast. So my outlook in life had never been anywhere to accumulate money anyway. Basically, I've always, as long as I can pay my bills and have a roof over my head, and I enjoy. So, I've tried to keep my work all through my life as well in just something that I enjoy doing. Anyway, neither here nor there. Point is, I'm here because of my disillusion with the world and the situation, and because I believe in James' vision, and I can't say that I have the intellect to, or I don't even know. Sometimes I question, why am I here? What have I got? What can I put into this? But obviously I'm here for a reason, because I was drawn to it right from the beginning, and I stick with it because I know that this is the only way to go. If we are collectively to get together and sort something out, it is the only way to go. And therefore that's why I'm here. Thanks.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, James. And welcome back, Michael. Happy smoking and going on mute. Loving the conversation. As David might observe, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Michael's loving the smoke. I'm loving the conversation. But in the end, what's getting done? David would ask. How many people have signed up on my app? Great questions. Ultimately, this needs to consolidate into action, crystallize into action. I happen to believe that conversation precedes action, and that there is definitely a place for conversation. So I'm going to go on mute, see if others have stuff to say, and then I've got something to say after that. Going on mute.
Yeah, I'm still favoring using your recent writings, Jamin, for an article in our newsletter, but also boiling it down to a pamphlet, like the new Common Sense pamphlet. You have such great writings already. I don't think you need to tidy up those writings very much. And we could share the pamphlet physically. People like to have something to read and to share with friends. I'm thinking, that's old school thinking, I know, but I like to have something to hand to people that I'm connected to.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. Thank you.
I did take a minute to sign into the app, but I don't know exactly what it does here. I'm not quite following because I couldn't watch the video and pay attention here. So.
Hence my request, give us time. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, no, I was just want to say in relation to that, I forgot to mention, I'm on a phone and it's an Android, so I can't go off the conversation and log into anything else. In the meantime, I'll get shut off. I'll lose conversation. So I'll log into that later.
Can I just, that's cool. Can I just show you, just for interest? It's not quite ideal, but it's not bad. Can I screen share just to show?
Yeah, let me see who's host. I think Mark.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Give me a second.
just because we did this with Humanity Rising. All right, that was the first experiment this year.
No, I got it, Marco.
Okay.
Alan was host, so let me make David co-host.
Yeah.
We did this with Humanity Rising, and then
Okay,
basically somebody gives a talk, and then they talk afterwards with the people listening, and then you can actually see the distribution, and you'll see what I mean, actually. So it's all about being active. So this is the app. It's accessible through web app. It's a web app, so you can access it in various ways. Make it a bit bigger. That's Marco right there. You can recognize him. Well, you can't recognize him because he hasn't put a photo there, but that's okay. I'm not expecting everything. But what I did was I invited him to this project, the invitation to co-create. And you can see, using a graph, you can see the different people that I have shared with. Sadly, it's a bit of a star graph because nobody else shares, but Kim has. Kim has shared it forwards to Connor. Okay, great. And Gary's got some kind of open invite, and that's it. Everybody else hasn't shared forwards. They haven't quite worked out. It's the sharing which is important, not just the receiving. Okay. Now, just for interest, this is the amount of money that I've given them. And we're talking about money. This is a one-to-one relationship with money. So I gave, Marco's there, and I gave him 10 credits. Okay, it's not much, Marco, I know. 10 credits is like 10p. It's like, I don't know, a few cents, 10 cents. But I gave £1. That's about $1 to Andrew. Okay, Andrew. And it shows kind of the energy or enthusiasm that person has. So Andrew's given it a 7. Marco hasn't looked at this project yet. He hasn't opened it. He hasn't looked at the video. He hasn't thought of the content. And at some point, he might put a number here to indicate his enthusiasm for it. Anne, who comes from another group, has opened it, looked at it, and then gave it a 3. And she says, came over from Seed and Spark, wondering what input is you're hoping for. And I'm like, yeah, okay, people have to learn how to use this tool. We have to learn how to use this tool. And, you know, Stephen's got another comment. Oh, why isn't it? There you go. Murmuration is a beautiful thing. Right. That should be disappearing. Right. So this is one thing. This is the distribution graph, okay, which is fairly obvious, and it should show virality. The extra bonus thing, oh, I can't show you. Because it basically shows another aspect of the system. I won't go into it. I'll just show you a graph of it just to show that there is something else interesting about it. If I view another project like Humanity Rising, it's got more people in it. This is the graph. It's been supported £15 or $15, which is not very much, admittedly, but that's because people haven't done the viral thing again. You see, there's not enough virality. There's just a link and it's linear. But once you have 2 people, then it becomes viral. This is the other thing which allows you to track gratitude and so on and so forth, value between people. So Marcia has thanked me for something. Julie has thanked, half of her thanks has gone to Karen, half of it's gone to me. And it's just another way to track value in a network. So that's good enough. Just wanted to show that there is some aspect of this. Thank you. The tool is, if you can appreciate it, and I think you do, I'm telling you, it's a world premiere because most people go, and it's like, well, what can I say? You know, what can I say? Okay, so I think it's a very powerful tool, and it's got, you know, the alternative economic. It's got like, you know, you're giving thing with money. Money is a vector. It's just like fucking bizarre. All right. So if you can help with this, if we can test it, if we can start giving it a go, I think that you guys are good. All right. What you said, James. All right. You're a good person. Okay. And you see the level of instruction and you're willing to go forwards. And I can say that Jamin has a good perspective on it. You know, the strategy, the L3, 4, I mean, I discussed, as I say, 3, 4, but definitely, you know, I want to play, but we need results. And if we don't get results within a very short time, I go, guys, we can just endlessly talk. All right, we need to get social results. And that means more than us, older people that for whatever reason are kind of coming together. Okay, we need to get results. Alan's very secret in the background there, but he's definitely, with that community cafe, he's definitely a social person. So, so I'm glad that I've connected with you guys. Thank you very much for actually listening to anything that I have to say. I also want to, like Jamin, spend most of my time in listening state to people. And I think that's when anybody new comes, it's basically, let's listen to them, okay? But we do need tools to empower the individuals that come. So if any individual comes and they, at the end of that hour, they're like, wow, I'm like, you know, I've been helped, you know, or I've got more money, or wow, this is the answer. You know, that's the kind of answer, that's the kind of level of solution we need to have. It's just really switched on. And, you know, we've got skills to offer wisdom, I think, insights, you know, maybe connections. I don't have any connections. Right.
This is Michael. I will join the app later today. Thank you.
If you want to create, Jamin, when you get on, a kind of project to then invite the people to that project, and I'll invite them too. And it just means we can experiment and thank each other while we're doing this kind of thing and anything else we do. And we can start experimenting. Don't expect any explanations. Just poke around, you know, try and break it, and hopefully learn. Yeah, no, honestly, it's a social tool. It's not a UI that I like, all right? It's whether it works socially. It's a reflective thing. It's not a Windows, okay? It's a mirror. So it's our social mirror, maybe. So if we can get a result soon, that'd be, I challenge us all. I challenge us to get a result soon. I've failed, okay, so far. So, you know, we'll see.
Well, I would say that any failure you've experienced is because of the lack of this, the lack of the collective. You know, you've acknowledged my ability to communicate. I thank you very much. I offer my communication abilities to your project, right? Let's work together. It's all about the collective. Anyway, I think this is probably a good place to pause. I need to take a few minutes break because I've got another meeting starting at the top of the hour. This room continues. One of us will keep it open. Marco, if you want to, let me know. Otherwise, I'll get another device going so I can keep this room going. Up to you, Marco.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this computer, and I got my other one.
Okay.
Queuing up
right.
for Kiko Lab.
Okay, I'm going to pause recording. Thanks so much, everyone. And David, listen, the last thing I want to say here is welcome home. With you, we were having a pretty cool time before you showed up, but listen, David, with you here, now it's perfect. So, no, really, we absolutely need you here. Welcome home. You're like the missing brother. We're like sextuplets, and then you somehow got shuffled around at the hospital. So welcome back. It's been half a century, but we've sure missed you, and welcome home. All right, pausing recording now.